place, discuss the most important topic on earth, peace. What kind of a peace do I mean, and what kind of a peace do we seek? I'm talking about genuine peace.
Go for gold, no.
So, we'll wait a little bit. I'm a little late, like 60 seconds late. I did say we were going to talk about war, religion, video games, and distractions. And there's a reason for that. But let me introduce myself in case, somebody's new to this page. I'm Rashawn. You can call me Rashawn VTP. I have been a performer in the arts, just all of the arts, theater, digital arts, visual arts since I was 9 years old. I've donned of my own accord my name, The Prodigy, because that's what I wanted to be, right? I never saw myself as a prodigy when I was young. I always felt that I had so much work to do and so much that I couldn't particularly accomplish because I was seeing, myself through the lens of other people's successes. But I'm a product of Oakland, East Oakland, particularly. I was born in the center of that, not deep east. There's I don't know nothing past seminary. I mean, until we get to San Leandro. But I was raised generally in East Oakland, with around Oakland, and then from there I got some experiences in the suburbs of the Bay Area. But for the most part, I say this to I got the best and the worst experiences of that in this environment. With that in regards, I learned how to read and write in Arabic. I'm currently learning how to speak Arabic, learning to translate the words and things like that. And all these things will be relevant as we continue the discussion. But I thought I should, preface with an introduction. Want to give people some time if they wanted to join in, and to really just bring home the concept that it's I'm not I don't view myself as anything special. I feel that it's special to me what are my concerns, and I need to get this little side right here is what's going on. I see. Maybe. No, it's just the camera's bent. Give me a second. Okay. There we go. A little better. Still could use a little bit on this edge. Anyways, but yeah, it's not a concept of me feeling like I'm extra special, right? We are all unique because we are all our own individual selves. But I got a lot of experience in both the church life, the Christian life, and the mosque life, the Muslim life. So there are just certain things where people try to differentiate certain things, and they're relatively very similar. So now that the introduction is done, let's get into the topics, and I'm going to try not to skip around. I made some notes so that way I don't skip around. But let me prop this up real quick. All right, so firstly, let's have a little fun. So I've been playing The Witcher. I've been playing Grand Theft Auto. Well, I played that before. Currently, because I beat The Witcher 3, now I'm on Mass Effect Andromeda, right? Love the game, Dragon Ball Z games, but Kakarot is a cool little RPG, and Fallout. Now, these, in accordance with war, they correlate. They all correlate, and it's. I feel like in the grand scheme, the multimedia that I receive is all this one big connected story. There's certain multimedia I just don't veer towards, and it's not necessarily that I don't like them. Like, I grew up when I was younger and Toonami was on. I used to love watching Gundam. Now I don't really remember much of it other than like the design of the main like white and blue guy robot. I don't remember what was going on in that, but you know, I've heard people give a little description of, you know, what's going on in there, and I'm like, oh yeah, child soldiers and political uprising and blah blah blah. And so that happens a lot in my anime and multimedia. But yeah, another set of games that I play. So I need to beat Mass Effect Andromeda. I need to beat Dragon Age, but Inquisition. I'm not playing through all of those games. I beat Mass Effect 3, but I'm not playing every single one of those. Very few series that I do that for. But for me to have been pulled to these particular things and then what's ongoing in them happening, I'm not going to tell everything because that'd be spoiling and wasting my own lifetime. But yeah, it's a lot of conflicts that are relative to the other multimedia that I watch and play, as well as the outside world, what's going on there. Yeah, Kingdom Hearts, love the whole series, but I only play the main games, so I can't wait till 4 comes out. Dark Souls, I played 2, right now I have Dark Souls 3, and when I get the next gen system, I'll get Elden Ring, and Demon Souls. Oh, and also that Elden Ring, Demon Souls, and Lords of the Fallen. Those are 3 that I'm interested in. They have nothing to do with this list. BioShock, Shadow of War, not the Lord of the Rings. I'm not really into that. But the Shadow of Mordor, Shadow of War series is really, it's a fun game set to play. I like action games that give a bit of dramatism to them. Like, I know why I'm doing the fighting. I don't like all of the RPG of stuff where you gotta stop and literally talk to folks the whole time through, like they're just video game characters. But yeah, you know, you get to make decisions and, you know, just learn how to operate in the general that whatever main character is. Metal Gear Solid 5 and Star Wars Fallen Order, that series. I like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Metal Gear Solid 3. Metal Gear Solid 2 is like memorable in my childhood, but I didn't really play it like that. But yeah, these games all together, they talk about uprising against corruption. There's realms of political conquest. So politics, or politicians trying to take over. The politicians are usually not the highest source, but they're a representative of this higher source. It's collective of guerrilla forces that are, you know, it's either, you know, collective of guerrilla forces or multiple citizen armies, and each one is led by like either one particular person or a council of people, right? And so how this is relative to all of us is, like, let's just take me for example. I see myself as a Ronin leader, right? That's my label name. That's my business, right? I am an individual leader. I am a general in my own regards, and I reach out to the other generals of justice and peace. Now, folks who prefer corruption or prefer the misleading and the problematic interactions of the world itself, they will entertain themselves with the concept of being devil's advocate. I don't advocate him at all. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it doesn't really matter to me, if there is some slight validity. Like, I'll hear people out regardless, but slight validity, like I catch that and I'm like, oh, you can talk, you can finish saying what you want, but that doesn't equal that you are correct, and that's not gonna make me agree with you. So with that in mind, it's like a double-edged sword to a certain extent, because you allow people to talk for so long even when they're wrong, and then they start to believe that they're right, or others start to believe that they're right, rather than understanding that they've just said more and more wrong things in this hope that this one particular thing is heard. And so in order to not even concern ourselves with that, I'm not going to give examples, but point is that I don't agree generally with folks who play devil's advocate. I don't play devil's advocate, but that doesn't mean you don't consider alternate ideas. It's just you don't try to see the good in an obvious bad decision, unless that's the literal only decision. And sometimes in those cases, it's best to just not do anything. If the only decision is the worst case or a bad decision, and there's not much good that you can find in it, or you have to sift through and search through just to find a little bit of benefit, it's no reason for it. So with that, in these forms of multimedia, there is, collective guerrilla forces led by one person or council, and the decisions, that the alterations in each space is made or changes everything per space, right? Changes the policies, changes the outcome of the citizens just based on a singular decision, or a singular person or council entity's decision. And this can be seen in the games the same way it can be seen in different people's countries. And it's generally just based on people's willingness or unwillingness to do something, like ceasefire early, because if you don't cease fire early, then you can't be mad if somebody fires back, right? And that's never a blame on somebody who's been victimized the majority of the time. But, it's like, it's either the unwillingness or willingness to do something, or unwillingness or willingness to learn something. Such as, we don't have to divide each other based on color or race or creed. Like, there are Israelis who stand beside Palestinians, but then what does that really mean? If you're just, like, for me, I'm not either one of them. So me posting on social media about how I feel about those things and what I feel should be done, like, I am an advocate for the peace between those lands. But I'm not an ambassador. There's no reason for me to set foot over there. There's no reason for me to do anything except provide the support that I can for the people that I can help, right? But on that side, if you're on a problematic side and you're saying that I don't enjoy or I don't want to be on this problematic side, then you immediately do everything that you can, even if you're viewed as a traitor on the problematic side, you oppose that side. You stand up to that side physically, right? Because at the end of the day, my fight is for African Americans, for Africans, for Afrocentric folk that are within other territories. That's my job. That's what I fight for. Even the concept of like I promote Islam in the concept that I promote peace, but I don't promote people's political regards to being Muslim. I don't really care how you feel about any particular stance if it's just based on what you want others to do in your country, because at that point it's the law of your land, right? So within all of that, there's not this deficit or problem that comes from us using these particular channels such as Instagram, Facebook, whatever social media to make our stance, because yes, you should go out and protest in the way that you know how. This is how I do, because at the end of the day, my biggest benefit is everything I'm thinking. It's like if I go out to protect somebody and fire some shots, I have a limited amount of that before I'm shot. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be folks that feel that way and that act that way based on their correlation, based on their understanding, and based on the understanding of the villain that is in target, right? It can't just be somebody who's a villain based on propaganda. With all that in mind, you can find that in the video games as well. So those things don't have to be distractions. They don't have to be. They are useful to redirect energy, redirect emotion, redirect psychological thinking. But it's not based along the idea of fighting. I just want to see something blow up, right? And sometimes, in GTA, sometimes that's what I play it for. But that's when I'm playing it for a distraction, right? There are truths that you can find within the media. But that doesn't mean you just listen to everybody's stance as truth. You question it. You compare and contrast it to what's going on, information you previously had, and things that can't be disproven based on fact and evidence. Well, another thing that you can also see in all of these games is that, the higher class is never on the side of true justice, even if the hero is a hired hand, even if they say, oh, these positive things will happen for you and this and that. Now, I'll get into my personal experience on that reasoning at the end, and just in case that my video gets cut off for some random reason, you'll understand why if you make it to the end. So overall, they inevitably turn on you because the goal is chaos. The goal is their control, which is us in chaos, which is the lack of equal order, right? So somebody's giving you orders to create chaos, then everything that goes on from you listening to them is their order. Even if it looks disconnected and disorganized and chaotic in society, the higher ups have order because nobody's looking at them. Nobody's holding them accountable. Nobody's at their door, and bombs are going off on the civilians. So all of that in mind, I saw there was a post that somebody was making, and whatever, folks generally view Jesus as God, right? I don't, but I understand the Christian values, I understand the Holy Trinity, all that stuff. What I see is that Jesus, or Isa in the Quran, was a man who prayed to Allah through his language, Aramaic. Allah is God, and showed the divinity of man, or the divinity that is within man. So I pray for Jesus. I pray for and through Jesus and Muhammad and the prophets and the angels, because to me it's an understanding that they are representatives of that divinity we're reaching towards, right? We are not sitting here trying to become Prophet Muhammad and we're not trying to become Allah, right? We're not even trying to become the angels. I would like to make this being, right, an angel. I would like to make this being a in the eyes of those folks, because I'll always have a respect that will, place me under them. But in the eyes of Prophet Muhammad and Jesus and Prophet Yusuf and Moses and Adam, all of them, I would like to be seen as an equal to them in some type of way, in their eyes, right? So it doesn't really matter what the rest of the world thinks. It doesn't really matter what anybody tells me while I'm alive, because nobody here has a full context and concept of who those individuals actually were. We understand what they did for humanity, right? And that in itself is something to respect. That in itself is something that I look to and honor. So with that, in regards, it's like people say, have the fear of God. And for me, it's like I love God. I respect God and I honor God. I have no fear in my heart towards Allah. I don't feel like there's room for that in what my goal is. I understand that if God chose to send me to hell right now, that's God's choice, and I respect it. But I work to not have that be the outcome for me, right? Because at the end of the day, I want God's love. I want God's respect. I want to be an honorable being to God, right? And so, for folks who have a high proclivity towards or magnetism, they're drawn to evil or sin, right? And they either know it and they're just like, well, God's gonna love me anyways. And like, yeah, God created you, same way. If my son is bad and I gotta give him a whooping, I'm still gonna love him. But that doesn't change the facts. Yeah, this particular piece. Point is, my soul will not change. And that's my goal. That's hopefully my message in that regard gets across to more people, right? I don't want people to feel like, oh, the only way to love God is to fear him. And it's like, no. You should not want the bad outcome from God. But it's not fully out of fear as much as it is like it's a respect and an understanding of that's the worst case scenario or a bad case scenario, right? Yeah. So let's cover this part just so that way we're done with the Israel stuff, because I'm sick of them talking about them. To be honest, I don't care if you're from Israel and you got a problem with what I'm saying and what, fuck you. So, with that said, Israel is a colonizer territory in Palestine. This is, information that I'm receiving from folks through social media, but who are posting an advocation for their home. And it's Palestinians are explaining that this isn't their home. They moved there, and they started war to try to own there or control there, right? And that sounds kind of familiar, right? So, with all of that in mind, though it appears as a country on the map, that's the type of manipulation, the distraction, right? So it's been there on that map for so long that, like, for me, I'm like, oh yeah, they're all countries. Somebody was saying Finland is actually like just a big body of water where the where a lot of Asian cultures go to fish, and so it's given this placement on the map, and I can't fully prove these things, but again, this is covered in the next section. But in that, it's you can distract somebody with the map itself just by, like, Africa being smaller on the map than it actually is, and other countries and continents being bigger on the map than they actually are. Yeah. So now, all of these things together, and I'll still be painted as a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm giving you information. I'm giving you information on what I heard. I'm giving you information on the facts. I'm giving you information on insights, right? With all of that in mind, I'm not theorizing shit, to be honest. It ain't a theory. It's the cold facts. And whether the fact is that these things are happening, or that these things were said, or that this is the case, regardless of what the evidence or fact is, right? So it's not a theory. And the conspiracies are done by the corrupt people, right? Somebody conspiring, when you're conspiring against somebody, right? That means that you are opposing or corruptly planning or plotting against, right? So who's the conspiracy against is the question. And the conspiracies that conspiracy theorists are discussing are against the citizens, are against the civilians, right? Even against the soldiers, because you're sending soldiers out here to muck up their souls, and then they come back and they're like, well, it had to be for a reason. And it's like, a lot of it is not for a reason. We should have defensive, or if we all were just about justice and peace, and there happened to be, I don't know, some fish people or what there was in Australia, there was a war against emus, so if there's that type of situation, there should be people who are ready to fight an uprising of beings that are opposed to humanity, right? But at this point, there are either humans that are opposed to humanity, or there are distant beeping. There are either people opposed to humanity that are human, or there are people who are observed as human that aren't exactly, or don't view themselves as human, that are opposed to humanity, right? Whether that's robots or reptilians or shapeshifters or aliens or whatever the fuck, they don't view themselves as human, and thus, why would they be leading a human army? Why would they be telling humans to fire bombs and missiles and guns at humans? And that's not even all of the weapons, right? And there's people who got, they was talking about the fires in Maui was caused by lasers. They're talking about, you got napalm and flamethrowers. You got mines and sound cannons and some earthquake machine that's out in Antarctica. So these things are being reported by ex and former agents of different government entities. So in them defecting and them having a moment to tell folks why they defected, why would they choose to tell you a lie? Right? When the folks who, like the CIA, FBI, say that they had no involvement in stuff that they come out years later and say that they had involvement in. Like JFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Robert Kennedy. So we can't say that these things are not factual or not backed by some sort of evidence. So with that, what conspiracies do we need to really concern ourselves with in understanding as far as this conversation goes? So firstly, we talked about distractions, right? And how certain multimedia can be utilized to find factual evidence, even if it's not clearly placed within them. Now, what becomes of excuse me. There we go. The evidence that is given to us is then this thing was something that somebody was calling a conspiracy or conspiracy theory, and then it was given some sort of dismissal, and then it was when I feel like I just said the word, what's the word? Whatever, when you release and say that it actually happened, right? Unclassified. There we go. So theorists, the concept that somebody's a theorist, you're saying that they're basically a journalist that doesn't yet have evidence or proof, right? But if you say some old conspiracies like, MK Naomi, and just typing in MK Naomi is going to show you a bunch of other suggested conspiracies conspiracies that happened. And so, 1950s and through 1970s, MK Naomi was going on. And that started after MK Ultra was going on, which was around 1953. So, so MK Ultra was, they were using things like high doses of LSD and psychoactive drugs to make people's minds more malleable, more controllable. Also, things like electroshock and what else did I write down? Hypnosis, sex abuse. All of these things, are like, if I do this to somebody, the entity that was doing this, and you can look up who was doing this, but I already said it. That scenario in itself, they're saying, if I do this to these people and I do this for long enough, right, then they'll do what I say. Not cool. But it's a conspiracy. They are conspiring against us. MK Naomi was like biochemical warfare, so putting chemicals out into the air, seeing how it affected civilians, trying to figure out how to pacify people or, kill people without there being evidence, right? But if somebody, like for me, I've had some occurrences where I was a danger to myself. Now, if I just turn up and I'm suddenly gone, I didn't do it. I didn't do it to me, okay? Because quite honestly, I already did every possible thing that I could to try to test whether or not I'm supposed to be here. And apparently I am. And so if somebody else decides that they don't want me here no more, that's exactly what happened. I didn't do nothing. Okay, so all of that in regards. Stuff, all of these things they involve is torture, such as sensory deprivation, all without consent, to manipulate mental states and brain function. Illegal human experimentation is the shorthand of that. You can also look up, because these is exactly, again, Google told me this. So at the end of the day, it's like if none of this is true, then this is the most highlighted information when you just type in MK Ultra or MK Naomi. Project Artichoke, you can look that up. Operation Mockingbird, you can look that up. Operation Northwoods, you can look that up. Project Monarch, you can look that up. And MK Delta, you can look that up. So now, those were the prior things in the past, classical conspiracies. Okay, so stuff that they were saying hippies were conspiracy theorists about, right? And then it comes out and those are the facts. So now the new age stuff and stuff that's been, coming out from people posting or standing up and opposing, agencies in the 80s, whether they're defective agents or, higher authority political figures or government figures, not necessarily just because you're in the government doesn't mean you're a high class individual or respected by the high class. But it's been stated about things like Project Blue Beam, a blue beam from the sky or a beam from the sky that can cause issues such as fires and explosions. We already talked about that, but it's also supposed to be accompanied with the idea of what's that called, holographic imagery that would give us the concept that an alien invasion is happening, and then we all go, oh, government, please help us. Oh, let's all just gather together. The government says, okay, well, we'll all unite together if you abide by all of these rules, and we will stop the aliens. And really, they're just saying, we'll stop firing on the citizens. Fuck that. So, with all of that in mind, That leads to 15-minute cities. Or before that, there's 15-minute cities. There's mass public surveillance, and a lot of that is going on in China. But the idea that you can have a social credit system, I forgot the words until right now, so I didn't write it in my notes. But a social credit system, the idea that if I spit on the wrong ground and the camera catches me, then I get docked, like my credit score. I don't really, we'll probably never talk about credit scores. I don't care about that. But, do you have a social score and basically me posting this type of information just because the government doesn't like it, I then become a red alert citizen, and now anytime I text you or anybody who follows me, they get docked in citizenship because they don't want you to have the information from me. And quite honestly, if that scares you, if that makes you, worrisome about me, then that's on you. Because at that point, that makes you a red alert citizen to me, right? But just the idea that, getting people so afraid of standing up to oppressors that we are cowered in our own corners talking to people only about the lighthearted bullshit that they're manipulating us with. And I mean, of course, there's times for that. It's like I don't expect people to be having these conversations while they're watching the game today. I don't expect, folks to spend their whole movie visit talking about the inner workings of conspiracies. I expect that folks should understand that these things are going on, because this actually is the beginning, like they're problematic, but they're least problematic of this list. So let's get to the end of the list, and then y'all could, you're already home or doing whatever you're doing, but I'll leave you alone on this page about it. So, so we got the 15-minute cities, got the mass public surveillance, you got Project Bluebeam, the removal of the Constitution. So I haven't seen a lot of posts on it lately, but I've also seen a lot of posts about a lot of to start this section. I'm not homophobic or transphobic. I do not care about your personal choices. I do care if you try to make somebody else make your personal choices. Everybody should have the freedom to choose on their own, as long as they ain't doing nothing that hurts other people. With that stated, there's this idea of all these policies about what, you can't call somebody who's trans gender that they don't want to be called, or else you could go to jail. Schools saying that they can give gender altering therapy and care without telling you, or with delay of telling you. Even the idea of pressing these thoughts heavily into children, when that's more like a sex ed discussion that lasts at most a week. It's like, again, then everybody is gonna make the choices that they was already gonna make. But if you make it for a month, a year, the entirety of somebody's school year or a school life, that's what they had to discuss, and that's what they had to pick a side on that. Then it makes everybody, like the folks who was initially, fine with just believing themselves as trans and not bothering anybody with it, either become extremists on that account, or they start to or they just don't do that, and now they live in this misery of how they didn't want to feel, because they felt that the choice that they made for themselves was negative, because there's a social movement for it to harm other people, right? And the same goes for those who would have never made that choice. Then they go back and forth, because again, you're dealing with kids. It's like human, when you're talking about a mature human, like, yeah, you can tell me day in and day out about how good pork is, and I'm not gonna want to eat it because religiously I don't eat pork. For my own health, I don't eat pork. But you know, you want to eat pork, that's fine. You know, if something has gelatin in it and I find out later, then I'm not about to go throw up what I just ate, you know, I'll just won't eat that no more. But yeah, so that's you know, that's one section of it where they're trying to control people with policies, but it's a constitutional conversion that they're trying to do, where I can't say what I want to say, can't do what I want to do, can't, you know, the inalienable rights that are mentioned, and I think it's like the Fourth or Fifth Amendment, something like that. You know, you have unalienable rights, which means like there are things that if they don't directly contrast law, I don't have the right to steal, but I do have the right to fight somebody who has harmed me or who has tried to physically violate me. I have the right to owning a gun, a weapon, as long as it's not a weapon of mass destruction, because there should be no reason to mass destroy. Yeah, so watch out for when people are trying to affect your constitutional rights, because however you feel about America, that's the basis of America. Without the Constitution, there is no America. There's just owned territory by Eurocentric thinking folks that used to belong to Native Americans, which are just traveling Africans from the time of a little bit before or after Pangea. So, then there's, you know, watch out for bugs in your food. Not like a bug landed in your food. Like some folks is cooking with bugs and making bugs an ingredient in your food. What food? It all depends. You know, it's like for me, I'm not about to sit here and look up lists and lists of every single food that does have bugs in it, because at the end of the day, it's like I do. It's very minimal, but I live in a very minimal sense of blissful ignorance, but not to the level that I don't know it's possible. So the moment that I know the words for the ingredient that is bugs in your food, I'm out of it. Yeah, there's you know, human meat in certain food, and somewhere in UK is they're working on that. It's basically like taking, like, you got a little sliver of skin and they start growing from there, and it get crazy. It get real crazy. But that in itself, they have labs for that. Not to mention that there's human trafficking, there's known cannibalism that goes on, and there's the concept of adrenochrome that connects politicians to eating the blood of children, literally. So, all of that in mind, yeah, there's also collaborations between different names for the devil and demonic forces and sin within things such as the main one people love to use is Baal, B-A-L or B-A-A-L or whatever, the little goat face motherfucker. Yeah. So all of that together, watch out for all this nonsense that's going on, because I'm telling you what's going on, but it don't make it not nonsense. Yeah. Human trafficking businesses and associates. So there's hotels and Airbnbs and different organizations that are like based in. They got hidden rooms and ways to kidnap folks, and folks go missing, and they was just out for a little vacation, and they never left their room as far as people think, but now they ain't here no more because somebody done kidnapped them, or now they are in some sense of dismay and crisis because they are now being sold into a form of slavery. Devaluing the dollar, or not just not just the dollar, but money itself, right? So if you give me $1 and it's this dollar is $1, right? Let me let's first. All right, you give me $1 and this dollar is $1, right? So me born in the 90s this is $1, right? Okay, so now what you're saying when we get into this particular point in time is that the $1 that I would have had when I was born now is worth $2, technically, right? But I only have $1, and that $1 is now in the future where it's worth half, right? To me in the 90s, that dollar would be worth 2 of this time. But in this time, this dollar is worth half of the dollar I had when I was born. That is the devaluing of money. And so what happens when it's only worth a quarter, right? Then it stops being a reason to have dollars, to be honest. Oh, well, we need to be able to count. You don't. You barter, and what's the value of a PlayStation to you when you're trying to get a PlayStation? Because otherwise, you could go fishing for fish. You could go, you hunt some bees for some honey if, if you bought it. But, yeah, you go hunting. You can build shelter. You can learn electricity and all those things. So then it just becomes either learning how to build devices or, the devices that already exist, you barter for them with, 100 fish or something. But the point is that that dollar that you had ain't worth the dollar that it ain't worth the dollar that it used to be, right? You still got that dollar from the 90s, but you might as well have spent it in the 90s. All right. Digitally tracked money, right? So you got a debit card, yeah. The bank is already loaning out people's money, yeah. But and there is a digital account of what you spent on, yeah. However, when you have the money to buy something, you can get whatever you want, right? So if somebody's telling me, oh, well, I don't want this individual to have a fishing pole because then he'll be able to go fish. So anytime he goes to a fishing store, we're going to decline his card. That's not cool. That's fighting words. You telling me you want to have the ability to starve me? Even for a second. That's fighting words, right? And so we need to understand the fighting words that are going on in this political climate, because at this point in the era, and in this era, I'm technically old enough to be a mayor, right? I'm not old enough to be a president yet, and so, the 10 years my senior is. But at the same time, if, everybody's in crisis mode and worrying and panicking or just trying to abide by the rules when these rules are already broken. It's not just a colonized country where they support war that harms other people, because in that, then you're saying, oh, okay, well, when I become president, I will not let that happen anymore. But you're saying that without all of the citizens, or at least a majority or a large amount of the citizens, they're saying all you need is 5% of the citizens of the world or each territory or whatever. I guess basically equals the same thing per territory. But, all of the citizens don't stand up against it, then you start to have a continuation where, okay, you have a good president, but there's still human trafficking happening. And so then that president is blamed as the human trafficker. Then they're removed from presidency and may be imprisoned. And then the human trafficking is still going on. That means that it wasn't them doing it. Or they weren't the key and core to it. So, religious persecution. There is no reason for your religion to come into play with any legal matter ever. Ever. Constitutionally. Ever. So if there is somebody standing up against you religiously about, or legally and politically about your religion, you could be a Jew, a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddhist, what's that other one? Hindu. And at the end of the day, there should be no reason for you to be held accountable as a problem simply because the religion that you hold. Unless, and I feel, unless you say that you're a Satanist, like atheist, you just don't, you don't believe in God, you're not sure, you're skeptical, what's that other one? Agnostic, you aren't sure, right? Or maybe you believe in God, but you don't really have a religion. That's different than a Satanist. You believe in somebody who wants to damn people to hell, right? And they hide that under the guise of, I'm trying to give you true freedom and liberation. No, don't work like that. So I don't read satanic Bibles, satanic verses, satanic concepts. When I see people doing all of that, I'm like, look, man, you look in any one of these books and you'll see how that process works. It is literally the basis form of the concept of freedom, right? Whatever Iblis was written to be before they became the fallen angel, they ain't that no more, right? So if you're reading into the history of Iblis before becoming a fallen angel, basically before Adam's existence, then that's one thing, right? And then you start talking about it from that perspective and whatever, he was called before that. And so with that being the case, though, you still got to recognize that being's downfall, right? So if it was all good until the point where he said, I'm not going to bow, then everything up to the point of not bowing was valid, and then he goes into this frozen point of stasis where he's just listed as evil and irrelevant to anything good happening. With that, watch out for folks who trying to give you information and then they suddenly disappear. Because that means there's an issue. That means there's more going on than you really have, then you really can account for, because this is happening to a lot of folks. They're just giving you information and then all of a sudden it's like they're not here no more, and it's not a coincidence, especially when they say something like, I didn't do it to myself, right? I'm not, no matter what anybody says, no matter what any news information says, I didn't do it to myself. Right? And so if that's the case, and I know factually that I didn't do that to myself, I told you that I didn't do that to myself, then you know factually I didn't do that to myself. Right? Now, if I came on here and I'm like, I don't know, y'all, man, I ain't really feeling it. This stuff got me feeling this type of way where, like, no. And accidents could happen where, I don't know, a meteor could fall right on my head. But is that likely? As far as my health, my physical damages are 8 years old, the most extreme of them. So any of that afterwards is it has nothing to do with this, with what goes on now. If something happens to me, same way if it happens to folks who are doing the same concept, the same line of trying to inform and enlighten. And I believe that this is better than saying nothing, because at the end of the day, the harm of my body is worth the alleviation of my soul, right? My soul needs to not feel like I can't tell people the truth because I might get hurt. I was just telling my son, like, that's not the, like, I'm like, if you're about to fall, and I can help you, should I help you? And he said, yeah. And then I was like, well, what if I get hurt? What if I could get hurt? And he's like, I'm like, should I still help you? And he's like, well, yeah, you could just do it carefully. I'm like, but what if I can't do it carefully? Right? What if there's no way for me to carefully help you? Right? And so, he began to understand. He's like, oh, like, I see what you mean, and so, like, I still want you to help me. Right? So that's why I feel like this information is important. feel like folks should really try to learn multiple languages. Right now, basically, I made a list of paragraphs that cover what I want to regard, but they also cover exact words, or ways in which I prefer to phrase things. And I have those underlined in English, and then I translate them into different languages. Right now, I'm working on Arabic, Spanish, Japanese. There's going to be like 15 different languages that I have that for, including a SL. Yeah, not very fast at it, but yeah, I can spell out whatever I want to say in in ASL. I believe is this please, or yeah, this is sorry, so this is please, I believe, something like that. Yeah. So yeah. So, just that concept alone is something that's good for folks to, one, busy themselves with, but not as a distraction, as a way for you to expand your community, expand socializing with folks, and make sure that, you don't end up misunderstanding or not being able to understand, like, just the concept of, like, I'm black, so if somebody say Negro and I don't know that just means black in Spanish, then I'm thinking that they calling me a nigga. Now we got an issue, and I just don't speak their language right. So yeah, with that, I saw the number on my live shift the moment that I said that I'm an advocate for Islam. Islam means peace in Arabic, right? I am a Muslim, by the sense that I believe in what these books have to teach in regards to God. I believe in the message from God. I believe in the messengers of God. Do I believe that, I believe that the Quran is the least touched, altered holy book, right? Because you have to be able to say the Arabic in a proper way, in order for it to be exactly the Quran. And then that in translation, there are different ways to regard the translation, but only to a certain extent, because those words mean what they mean. With that in mind, it is stated that the Quran, in the Quran, that it is a book of guidance towards perfecting your religion, your way of life. The Bible is a historical regard of what was going on in us having a way of life that is culturally united or centered in the scale of not just monotheistic beliefs, but the concept of all theological beliefs. You have the Upanishads, which the Upanishads is Hindu based, and even though they said Hinduism is not really the proper word, like it's a European word, but that religion, there is the Bhagavad Gita, which holds information of the Buddhist beliefs, right? But this is a belief system on a spiritual plane that we're all reaching to based on different environments and different territories. So again, that goes back to, there are different decisions that are made by these collective guerrilla forces led by one or a council. And they have different outcomes and different things that are stated, but ultimately it's like, you don't read the Upanishads to disregard the Bhagavad Gita. You don't read the Quran to disregard the Torah or the Bible. It's just not how it works. And so if that's what you're doing, then you're doing it wrong, right? And that goes with all of the information. If you are trying to find some other information that is disconnected to disprove information that would otherwise be important or valuable to hold, like you knowing that you aren't a cannibal doesn't mean that people aren't trying to feed you human meat, It's just logics. Yeah, they all hold historical knowledge and spiritual truth of value. There's no need to convert your religion to read, gather information, value gathering information. Because at the end of the day, there are individuals trying to eliminate us. Look into the concept of depopulation or depopulation. The plan to depopulate the world by up to 90%. And who is our proponents, our advocates of that? Because there are people who are advocates of that. All of the Hollywood cultist, whatever, like it correlates. They are part of that. But ultimately, knowing people's cult rituals, unless you're going to stop all of it, doesn't really matter, right? What matters is that it doesn't matter if you just know that, right? I can tell you the happenings of, this person sacrificed a goat, or this was posted about these people who whatever, and it's like, I saw a video of a British kid who was being interviewed saying that his father made him and his brother kill babies and children. And again, like, it's like this stuff is, otherwise I wouldn't be having these conversations, but the information is being given to you because at the end of the day, it's like you can't walk around believing that this stuff isn't possible. It's the most possible stuff that's happening. Because at the end of the day, it's like we are the product of World War I, II, Civil War, the transatlantic slave trade, all of it. We are the product of that, right? So there is no way for us to say, oh, well, that continuing couldn't be possible. No. They used to cut off appendages of ours and pickle them, burn us, hang us, imprison us for no reason. Still do a lot of that stuff to an extent I couldn't even know, because it's happening in multiple territories. But that don't mean that that's that don't mean that that's the land. That doesn't mean that that's the law. That doesn't mean that that's the policy we should uphold. So for folks who are up to the concept of fighting in a collective, in a way that benefits us, and it doesn't necessarily have to be violence, we can continue this conversation. Somebody opposing what I've had to say about any of this stuff, there ain't no reason for you to talk to me at all, right? Because at the end of the day, it's like, just imagine if Europe stated that half of Africa was actually Europe, right? Now, at the same time, they already treat Africa like they own parts of it, because they send money in and steal stuff out. Barely send money in, to be honest, right? Because they have military figures that are within their territory. And so that means that what? That you run it? That you own it? No, you're trying to bully. You're trying to conquer. You're trying to oppress. And so that's what's happening in all of these regards. Look up what you want to look up. But I gave you all the information that is plausibly useful. There's a lot of information where, it's labeled again as conspiracy theories, and some of it is like the majority of the sections are the distraction-based information. It's not necessarily that it's not happening or not important. It's just not important right now. It's not relevant to right now or to making a broad-scale impact. And that's my time. I'll probably do this same type of live on this same type of information on my Ronan Lita account and then on my Facebook account. But until then, peace. I hope you all Have a great day. Enjoy the game. Enjoy your life. But remember to educate yourself. And don't disregard that there is still information to be gained just because somebody from the government has distracted you from or told you not to worry about the subject at hand. We'll keep it at there's depopulation, Project Bluebeam, and Israel is not a country. Peace.